There is a kind of man that walks into a room and doesn't have to say a single word. Yet every woman turns her head, not because of his money, not his looks, but something else. Something ancient, something silent, something women can feel even if they don't understand it. Carl Jung called it the integration of the self. The moment a man stops chasing power and becomes power itself. So why do women instinctively lean in when he enters? Why do they trust his eyes? More than 100 charming words? Because silence, when rooted in presence, becomes the loudest force in the room. And that is the brutal truth no one talks about. Let's take off the mask for a moment, because if you're watching this, chances are you've felt it too. That silent ache of being a man in a world that doesn't seem to see you. The pressure to be strong, but not too strong. To be sensitive, but never needy. To be assertive, but not aggressive. To be everything, while feeling like nothing. You try to do the right things. You give your best. You show up. You care. But late at night, when the noise fades and you're alone with yourself, there's this quiet voice inside that whispers, "Why does it still feel like I'm not enough?" Maybe you've been in love, deep sacrificial love, the kind that bends until it breaks, and you watched her slip away. Not because you did something wrong, but because you gave so much of yourself that there was nothing left of you to hold on to. You start to ask questions you never said out loud. Why does she choose him over me? Why do I get friend-zoned while she runs after someone who treats her like an option? Why do I feel invisible when I've done everything right? But here's the brutal truth. You were never meant to beg for love. Because love that must be chased is love that will always run. You were taught to be the nice guy, polite, accommodating, always agreeable. But no one told you that niceness, when rooted in fear instead of truth, becomes a prison, a mask. Women don't fall for masks. They fall for presence. They fall for men who have returned to themselves. Men who don't chase validation like a starving dog chasing crumbs. Not because they're heartless, but because they can only respect what feels anchored. And here's the part that hurts. You've probably already been that man for brief moments. Moments when you weren't overthinking. Moments when you weren't trying so hard to be liked. Moments when you just were fully, unapologetically, quietly you. And in those moments, didn't the world seem to move differently around you? Didn't people listen more? Didn't she look at you longer? It wasn't about playing a role. It wasn't about trying to be what she wanted. It was because even just for a second, you remembered your own gravity. You were whole. But then the world got loud again, and you shrunk. You slipped back into the shell, and the silence returned. Brother, this isn't about shaming you. It's about waking you up. You're not broken. You're buried under years of expectations, disappointments, and lies that told you that you had to earn your worth. You don't. You just have to reclaim it. Because underneath the doubt, underneath the pain, is a man the world needs. A man that women crave. Not because he's perfect, but because he's real. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychoanalyst who mapped the soul like no other, once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." He wasn't talking about success. He wasn't talking about fame. He was pointing to something deeper, individuation, the process of becoming whole. See, Jung believed that every man carries a shadow, a dark, unpolished, instinctive side, and most men, terrified of being disliked, bury it. They wear masks. They play roles. They become good boys, and in doing so, they disconnect from the one thing that makes them magnetic, authenticity rooted in wholeness. Because here's the paradox. When a man accepts both his light and his shadow, he becomes real, and women are drawn to what's real. Now here's where it gets interesting. You'd think women fall for the rich guy, the funny guy, the alpha, the bad boy, but that's just surface. Ever seen a woman completely surrender to a man who barely says a word? Not because he's mean, not because he's mysterious, but because he's anchored, like a mountain in a storm. That's the silent power Jung was pointing to. A man who doesn't need approval, because he's already approved of himself. A man who doesn't chase, because he chooses. It's not arrogance, it's self-possession. And that is the one thing a woman can't fake, can't manipulate, can't resist. If you've ever felt this truth in your bones, if you're starting to remember who you were before the world told you who to be, you're not alone. This is your space, a place for the ones awakening. So if this is speaking to something deeper in you, like, comment and subscribe. Not for me, but for the man you're becoming. Because your journey deserves to be witnessed. Let me give you something practical. Next time you're with a woman, or anyone, try this. Don't rush to fill the silence. Hold it. Let it breathe. And instead of trying to be liked, observe. Observe your urge to impress. Observe her reactions. And most importantly, observe yourself. In that moment, you reclaim your power. You're not performing. You're not seeking. You're simply being. That shift, subtle, quiet, internal, is the seed of transformation. Because when you stop seeking approval, you stop giving away your soul. Here's the deeper truth. Every man has a warrior inside him. Not a violent one, but a deeply grounded one. A man who's not desperate for love. Because he is love. Disciplined, unshakable, present. This man doesn't chase women. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't become a clown in the circus of modern dating. He walks. He speaks when it matters. He looks a woman in the eyes not to impress her, but to see her. And ironically, that's when she feels the safest. Not when you give her the world, but when she knows. You won't lose yourself to give it. That's the kind of man women can't resist. Not because he needs them, but because he sees them from a place of wholeness. So, what now? After everything you've heard, after the mirrors you've looked into, after the truths you've felt in your chest like thunder, what do you do with all this? You remember? Not something new, something ancient, something buried inside your bones. You remember who you were before the world told you to be polite, quiet, controllable, disposable. You remember the boy who had fire in his eyes, curiosity in his soul, and a heart that beat like a drum, not to please, but to live. You reclaim that fire, but now you temper it with wisdom. You no longer burn to be seen. You burn to see. You stop asking, how do I make her like me? And you start asking, am I proud of the man I'm becoming? You stop walking into rooms trying to be the loudest, because now you are the room. You stop chasing women hoping they'll make you feel enough, because now you are enough. Not because you tick all the boxes, not because you've achieved every goal, but because you've learned to sit with yourself, fully, calmly, deeply. That is presence. That is masculine energy. That is the silent power women can't resist. It's not a trick. It's not a tactic. It's a frequency. And the more you remember who you are, without the noise, without the masks, the more you'll begin to attract what aligns with your truth. The women you used to chase, they'll sense something different. They may not even understand it, but they'll feel it. In your stillness, your gaze, your restraint. You no longer look at them as saviors. You see them as companions, not crutches. You honor them, but you no longer shrink for them. Because when you finally sit in the throne of your own being, when you no longer flinch from your own shadow, the world bends toward your silence like trees leaning toward the sun. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be true. And if that truth is heavy some days, if it aches in your chest or shakes in your hands, good. That means you're still human. That means you're still alive. That means the world hasn't taken everything from you yet. So rise, quietly, fiercely, without apology. Become the man who doesn't beg to be chosen, because he chooses himself every damn day. And that kind of man isn't just unforgettable. He's undeniable. If something in this spoke to your spirit, if you felt seen, remembered, or simply awakened, give this a like. Drop a comment and let me know you're walking this path. And subscribe, not for content, but for communion. Because here, we don't chase noise, we build power, silently, steadily together.